All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Peaking Podcast. We have Alex Doonanco with us. He is the CEO and co-founder of Carecycle. Alex, welcome to the show. Excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Carecycle and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. Great to be here. So Carecycle is an AI native operating system for Medicare agencies. So it started out primarily with voice AI teams, wondering how we can extend people's capacity and basically create, not just automate conversations that used to take place over the phone between Medicare agents and customers, but think from first principles about, well, with AI technology, how can we create net new conversations that previously couldn't exist with humans? And so that's kind of ballooned into this new kind of system of record that dispatches these assistants and tracks their activity. So very excited generally about how these kinds of technologies are shifting paradigms in interfaces and software in general, shifting from basically software being something where it's a framework where you can do tasks or do work within it to now software does work for you. You just need to be able to either direct it or observe it.
What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions of voice AI as it's been in the past, but also where it is now?
Yeah, so I started in voice AI back in the end of 2021 and joined a company called AI Rudder. They were very much an early mover in the industry out of Singapore. They started in 2019 and very quickly realized that a few misconceptions that existed then and continue to exist today are the obsession over how human-like it is. So a lot of people are constantly asking me things like, how does the voice sound? How is the latency? Which are important details for sure. But what we index more heavily on is how helpful is the conversation. A very helpful robot, even if it sounds like a robot, is actually a better customer experience than an unhelpful human in the
Right.
same scenario. And an
Yeah.
unhelpful robot is actually worse than anything. And that's what
Yeah.
people are most used to.
Yeah.
So that's a major misconception. Just the more human-like it is, the more effective it is. In fact, I think those designing voice AI conversations need to think really carefully about the conversation itself rather than the underlying technology or the pipeline or the framework they're using, especially as it becomes easier and easier to kind of make AI talk. It's not a matter of making AI talk anymore that's exciting. It's actually what you can do with it in terms of embedding industry knowledge, maybe in a particular use case, or
Mhm.
embedding customer information to make that conversation more personalized. So we're experimenting with things like memory across various interactions, where voice AI really becomes like a bartender at your local bar or your local diner, where you're not going up and you're treated like you're going there for the first time. It's like, hey,
Right.
who are you? What do you want? Instead, it's, hey, Brian, do you want a Guinness again? Right.
Yeah.
And this is going to take place if practitioners in the space are very thoughtful. We can live in a world where every industry you interact with is like that, whether it's your car insurance, your health insurance, you're buying a car. Everyone can basically be a great sales assistant with perfect recall, which also gets, pretty exciting when you think about personal assistants and,
Mhm.
Jarvis-like systems, which folks like 11 Labs are kind of playing around with right now with their mobile app.
Well, cool. So when you go back to the maybe the legacy systems, the original way things were structured and solving the business problem. So tell us about like what was the previous system and how has that changed now with Carecycle?
Yeah, so when we're looking at Medicare, Medicare agencies are, like in most insurance verticals, they are sales organizations at the end of the day. So these are companies with licensed agents whose task is to be a trusted advisor for seniors signing up for a supplementary Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage plan. So in a most optimally efficient environment, they are actually spending all of their time with new customers, helping them compare plans, helping them shop for plans, and then ultimately selling them something
Mhm.
because that's where their incentives are in terms of commission. Now, the problem with that is because of that incentive, it's then very difficult to run an efficient organization that also retains those members and make sure that they're taken care of by having additional touch points with them. So what Carecycle enables is, like I said, not just automating minutes of phone calls that have always existed with humans,
Hmm.
but actually thinking carefully about which conversations haven't happened traditionally and actually should be happening in order for that member to feel
Yeah.
more at ease about their coverage, get questions answered about their coverage, and also, very importantly, know where to go, because they're marketed to very aggressively, particularly from October to January, during annual enrollment period, from several agencies. So we often say, if your members don't hear from you, they keep shopping, which is very true. They get several calls and ads targeted at them every day.
Hmm.
If they don't know your first name and you don't first demonstrate that you actually know their first name, it's very difficult then for them to reach out to you again if they do want to explore different plans, right? Or if they are having issues.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Would you, how, from a people standpoint, what are the size of companies we're talking about? Like from a call center perspective, how many people are in these roles doing these things? And then how many more people can be actually supported because of this technology, right? When it comes to the human element, we're so limited, in reality. But when you have these 24/7 agents, it really opens up a whole new level of 24/7 support.
Definitely. So I'm a really big fan of, when you're looking to build a business, whether it's a service or a product in general, the question I always ask is, are you a cost saver or are you a revenue center? Can you actually, through your product or service, generate your customer more revenue? Because at that point, there's no ceiling on how much value you can provide and therefore how much value you
Yeah.
can capture. So when it comes to Medicare, this is a very fragmented industry. So you have about 50% of total volume handled by a very small number of players. These are massive call centers and FMOs and large agencies that have hundreds to thousands or even tens of thousands of agents under their LOA. So that's the kind of the bulk of the industry. And then that's followed by a very long tail of independent agents and small agencies. So these are folks who traditionally serve their clients at their kitchen table, and they are a one-man shop
Hmm.
insurance broker, which is how the industry operated for a very long period of time. So it presents kind of a very interesting challenge and opportunity for us, which is how can we provide access to this kind of technology, this level of automation to those independent agents, and help them actually be competitive in this new market that's been very difficult for them to adapt to.
Hmm.
And the way we started is actually by serving the large call centers to understand their needs really deeply. And now we're kind of working down. And anyone building a software product, especially in AI, I would highly recommend that approach when you're looking at a fragmented market. The traditional SaaS play says to start down market and then eventually build out enterprise sales and figure out how to go up market. Because AI solutions are not tapping into software budgets or even marketing budgets, they're actually tapping into increasing top line revenue and therefore creating completely new budgets that didn't exist, or they're tapping into labor budgets. There's a massive opportunity here to sell to large organizations where, with the same product, you can create 10 or 100x the leverage, uh, as opposed to providing leverage to one individual insurance agent, which is very difficult to prove the value of early on.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Going back to your story, what was maybe the personal moment, the spark that led to Carecycle? What was that? Was that original thing? Was there a pain point? Was there something that happened? It's a unique industry, so very curious on that for you.
Yeah, so I fell in love with voice AI and the idea of voice as kind of a universal, very intuitive interface for anyone to interact with technology a few years back, and ended up having the opportunity to speak with folks in legal services, home services, various verticals of insurance, lead generation, all about using this kind of technology. And what I discovered, working in, for example, financial services, is there's an opportunity here to make a small incremental difference, by saving underwriters 5 minutes of a call by capturing more information with a robot.
Hmm.
And that can be all good and fine. But is that something that I want to spend the next 5, 10, 20 years of my life working on? It was really hard to get excited about, aside from being excited about the technology itself. So we ended up working with a few customers in the Medicare space, and a few things really jumped out to me. The first is that this is a tremendously meaningful thing to do. Myself, coming from Canada, when I first moved to the US, I was incredibly confused about the health insurance
Yeah.
situation. Looking at my parents and grandparents, I just empathize kind of indirectly
Yeah.
with, wow, I cannot believe that they would need to deal with this infinitely complex system with dozens of plans to choose from, and
Hmm.
a lot of frankly predatory stuff going on in the market to try to get them to select something, right? And
Yeah.
it's not all bad actors, but there is a very, very big need here for better understanding of the system and helping people navigate Medicare, because it is such a critical aspect of one's life, especially when you're beyond 65. Your healthcare needs become a lot more significant, and you
Hmm.
need to make sure that you feel safe, you feel covered. That's something that I didn't really need to think too much about growing up in Canada. And so it was quite shocking to me, just kind of seeing how complex this system is and understanding that we could use this technology to create a major impact or benefit in helping people navigate that, while helping the brokers alleviate this massive problem they have, being retention. Um,
Hmm.
so we started working with Medicare companies, and at first we were doing very similar things to what most voice AI companies and most verticals start doing, which is pre-qualification on the front end of the sale. So, how can we save incremental time and costs by having a bot ask a couple of initial questions and pre-qualify people before they speak to a human, to make sure that, folks who are getting connected with a human are eligible and interested to discuss whatever the product is. So that continues to serve a critical need. But what we realized is that there's a problem there to solve, but it has a ceiling.
Hmm.
What was more interesting is the retention issue. So traditionally, Medicare businesses have focused very heavily on their cost per acquisition. And I took a lesson from the software world, which is you can't just look at your cost per acquisition as the number one metric in your business, your CAC. You also need to look at your LTV.
Hmm.
So if your cost to acquire a customer is very low, but your churn rate is 50%, you're better off plugging the hole in the boat first. And
Hmm.
that's really what ignites exponential growth of the business, rather than, working really hard on, paid marketing, trying to replace the customers from last month. Right. So by implementing these systems to follow up with people, we started to see really major impacts in that retention and that LTV, to really start fixing the unit economics of these businesses. So that was also kind of a light bulb moment, that these pain points are both much more painful as well as more hidden than we had previously anticipated before we actually got involved and started talking with customers.
Yeah. So you just talked about a pivot moment, maybe not a full pivot, but an evolution of the product itself. And so, you know, where were you, or what came to the original idea? Was it you and a co-founder that were talking about this and this happened? How did that spark? Why did you choose to all of a sudden go this route and build Carecycle? And then I think pivot moments are great. A lot of our listeners are founders. A lot of our listeners have an idea, and these kind of moments I think are super inspirational for people to hear. And what led you to go down this path?
Yeah. So there were a couple of light bulb moments. The first insight is that, especially when there's a paradigm shift in technology or a major unlock, something like LLMs or something like voice AI getting, sufficiently good and cost effective to do things, means that you have a lot of technical founders or, excited software entrepreneurs go out there with that technology, basically being a solution in search of a problem. And that's a very, very dangerous place to be. Um, and you end up being very horizontal, I find. So
Hmm.
you say, hey, we offer X technology. We offer voice AI. What for? We don't exactly know yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a perfectly okay place to start, as long as you're very tenacious and you listen very closely to every customer conversation, with the intention of moving to something more specific.
Yeah.
So uh, about a year and a half ago, I went, okay, this technology is incredibly compelling. There are near infinite applications of it, but I don't believe that being a horizontal enablement layer for making voice AI talk is necessarily going to be a very enduring business as that component of the stack becomes easier.
Hmm.
So, how can I then instead focus on something very niche, something that, for example, OpenAI isn't going to do? I think
Hmm.
it's very important for AI founders to understand where the role of the AI lab ends and where their role as an application layer developer begins. And a lot of that comes down to, I would say, vertical expertise and embedding industry knowledge to solve very specific industry problems that others aren't going to touch. So
Hmm.
we went out in search of those problems. We ended up working with several customers across different verticals,
Hmm.
like business lending, auto insurance, legal, home
Yeah.
services, and Medicare. And frankly, a lot of them were viable opportunities that we could have scaled. Medicare was just the most compelling to us. We loved working with customers in Medicare, and we found the pain points to be the most interesting for us to really sink our teeth into and solve. Uh, so the first moment was really saying, hey, we want to apply this technology to solve something. Let's
Hmm.
go figure out who needs problems solved. Let's take note of what they are. Once we did that, we kind of triaged from there.
Hmm.
And that's how we ended up making the difficult decision at first to really niche down into one particular vertical and just go deeper into that. But that's really unlocked a lot of velocity for us because we can say no to a great deal of opportunities and instead focus on building a product that is very, very focused and as a result works faster to solve our customers' specific problems more quickly than anyone else can who is focused, in 5 different places.
Right. Yeah. Where'd you meet your co-founder?
I met him in high school originally. So
Love that.
I was experimenting a little bit, had a couple of co founders working on different projects
Hmm.
in those different verticals. Things didn't work out particularly well. And then we landed one of our first very large customers in Medicare. And I immediately jumped in my car and I drove from San Francisco back to Calgary to Canada. And I gave Evan, my co-founder, now CTO, a call. And I said, hey, we have a big project to work on. If you want to moonlight on something, this is pretty compelling. I think this could grow into something. And the next 2 weeks, we spent like 72 hours a day getting this system up and running. Once we were live, uh, he quit his job within about 2 days, and we decided to go full time on Carecycle.
I love that. I think that's so cool to have someone so close to you from a background. I think that's a really cool founder story right there.
Yeah,
Do you
and
guys?
pressure makes
So
fun.
is he come from a technology background? What's his background?
Yeah, so he's a software engineer. He previously developed APIs in the oil and gas industry
Hmm.
to modernize very legacy systems. We're talking about energy trading floors that transact hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that are operating on spreadsheets. So he transitioned everything to real time APIs and web applications. So a lot of his background is quite relevant. But one thing that has really stuck out to me in this journey, especially as we build out our engineering team, is foundational knowledge and raw horsepower in terms of problem solving ability is much more important than prior experience.
Hmm.
I would say, in fact, the more prior experience someone has, the more challenging it is for them to learn something totally net new. And
Hmm.
we're in a position where nobody's done what we're doing before. Nobody, including us. And so
Hmm.
we learn new things every single day. There's new frameworks and technologies that we can play around with every day. And we just need to test things from first principles. Even like GPT-5 being released today is
Hmm.
another opportunity for us to find out, how does this thing work? Because nobody knows. The developers who spend 8 hours on the day of the release really playing around and figuring it out become the foremost experts in the world.
Yeah.
So it's a really incredible time to be alive, in that the experts are those who simply tinker around. And move fast and play with things, and they're not tied down by any dogma of prior experience, nor are they tied down by, waiting for experts to kind of show them the way, or tell them, for example, that one model is better than another, or you should
Mhm.
use, WebRTC transport versus WebSocket transport is another case. Yeah.
Very cool. What does your current engineering team or your current team look like right now? And what's your philosophy around what that is going to look like in the future in terms of building and in the types of people you mentioned a little bit, but the types of people you want to bring on?
Yeah, so we're a very tightly knit team. We have a couple of engineers. We just brought on a full-time creative director for a lot more content and marketing work just on the
Nice.
distribution side. I handle most of the sales and customer care. Uh, Beyond that, I mean, we're really looking to be a billion-dollar company with less than 10 people. I
Hmm.
think that's something that sounded really crazy a year ago, but now we're seeing is very much possible. And at the end of the day, we are helping our customers leverage and augment labor to make one person as effective as 10. So we need to be able to do that ourselves internally as well.
Yeah. Super cool. Super cool. Um, what are some of the key attributes? You talked about someone tinkering, but what do you think are key attributes that make someone successful as an engineer in this day and age?
Yeah, I would say it's, in my observation, it's become more important that somebody be really good at reviewing code than writing code,
Hmm.
as of in particularly in the last year. So a lot of our code and our code base is AI generated. And that's something that, of course, is a trend across companies large and small. So it's incredibly critical that that engineer be able to be a master of these different AI agents, figuring out systems at a high level of how to observe them and how to observe their work and really sanity check all of it to make sure that not only the logic makes sense, but that it's elegant and that it works coherently with the remainder of the system, with some design thinking, some more creative thinking kind of embedded in all of it. So I think what makes a great engineer today is really someone who's incredibly malleable in terms of experimenting with new tools and is very opinionated about elegant system design, whether that's
Hmm.
back end or front end. You need to have taste, and that word gets thrown around a lot,
Hmm.
but you need to have a very high standard and bar for what a great experience means and be willing to push the boundaries of what that really means, because we are in a space where we have an opportunity to develop completely new software experiences. If you're building vertical software in particular, no one in Medicare has seen anything beautiful before, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So if you're a builder and you understand the value of beauty, simplicity, aesthetics, and taste, you have a chance to actually replace some pretty massive incumbents in a lot of these industries.
Yeah. Very cool. You know, so you talked about for yourself, kind of go to market, new client acquisition. I think that's some of the most challenging, aspects that founders are facing, right? Is that go to market strategy. Okay, we have this great technology, this great service, but how do we get it in the hands of users? And so maybe tell us a story about like, starting out. Okay, that go to market strategy, the first client acquisition, mindset around that, advice you give to other founders when it comes to getting clients and things that were successful and also maybe things that have been a challenge for you.
Yeah, so at the very beginning, it's very important to strike a balance between humility and authority. There's a lot of ways that this can be done, but ultimately, I found that invariably keeping a mindset of really not knowing anything about your prospect or their problems and having them relay them to you at first can be very valuable. In the context of things like cold calls, founders are often very scared to do this. And at the risk of sounding dumb, they simply either won't reach out to people or they won't be asking the right questions. And what I find is if your TAM is large enough, you don't need to worry about burning the entire market and looking stupid. Uh,
Hmm.
you can call 10, 50, 100 people and use those conversations to learn the right terminology and actually start speaking the language of the industry. You can learn more about their problems. And in the process, you end up building some kind of a wedge product that serves the seemingly common pain points across them, which earns you the right simply to have another conversation with them. Doesn't earn the right to have customers, but earns the right to learn more from people and learn what you need to do for them to be your customer. And it really goes back to this, classic YC idea of building something people want. If you are an outsider in an industry, it's impossible to know what people want without sounding stupid for a while and
Hmm.
asking those really simple questions and faking it till you make it in terms of speaking the industry language. We're at a point now where our whole team is becoming licensed Medicare agents and speak the language of the industry that,
That's awesome.
shortly, not long ago, they didn't really know anything about, right? So that's kind of the path is once you get some validation that there are problems to solve in that industry, you can really start doubling down on that and building a product. And we take the approach of being like our client's therapist.
Hmm.
So I love it when a customer comes to me and tells me about 5 problems in the business that have nothing to do with what we're currently building. It's created a lot of opportunities that we've said no to and some that we've said yes to, which have in some instances been, the silver bullets that actually make our product valuable. So that's kind of how we got started, is just reaching out to people and figuring out what those problems look like until something sticks.
Yeah.
In terms of igniting that flywheel, I would say content is really important, but content should not precede those individual hard conversations. Same thing goes with pricing strategy. I've met a lot of founders who are doing a lot of market research on how they price their product, how they structure it, and they're not really talking with people. When it comes to go to market, your laboratory of science is by asking people if they want to pay you money for what
Hmm.
you're offering
Hmm.
and how much they're willing to pay. And if they say that you're charging too much, it's a valuable data point. It's purely science, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Um, did you come from a background where you did cold calling in the past? I mean, because that takes guts. I think it's a really hard thing to do. Did that come easy to you? Where'd that come from?
Yeah. So when I was at AI Rudder, I was doing quite a bit of cold calling. I was going to
Yeah.
quite a few conferences.
Cool.
So figuring out go to market. Prior to that, I was at a PR agency that was very much a startup who's
Okay.
scaled really quickly now, specialized in helping Chinese companies in the US with local go to market strategy, building local teams.
Hmm.
So I was actually doing sales for professional services in my second language, kind of like Muhammad
Let's
Ali
go.
training underwater. So when I was doing sales in English, it ended up being like a huge relief. It's like the chains came
Yeah.
off of my arms and legs. But it is a difficult muscle to develop. Some are more predisposed towards sales. But one thing I've learned is that, in particular from YC, it's generally easier to teach engineers to sell than it is to teach salespeople to engineer. So if there's any engineers in the audience who are scared about cold calling, I mean, I've witnessed several founder friends who have figured this out in recent months
Hmm.
and just brute forced it and have ended up becoming experts. They're
Yeah.
using terms like BANT test. They're using a lot of, they sound like account executives now.
Yeah. That's
So it,
awesome.
it, it's not that difficult. It's certainly not as difficult as engineering. It's just, it's a battle of emotions, and it's a battle of the heart and the spirit rather
Yeah.
than the mind. So it's a different muscle to develop.
Love all of this. How was the YC experience?
Yeah, it was excellent. There's, I would say, increasing skepticism that I hear around whether or not it's worth it to apply to YC. I would say it is always incredibly valuable to apply. We actually used it as kind of an exercise just to refine our strategy and how we define our business to
Hmm.
see if it makes sense. Do kind of a sanity test on it. The fact that they were interested was really exciting. The fact that we got in was phenomenal. I would say that the value is not the investment, but the value is really the environment and the community that stays with you for life.
Hmm.
That has been absolutely immeasurable in its value. Just the amount of access that we get to people and the amount of legitimacy that it provides has been a godsend for us.
Very cool. I've heard that a lot. It's about the relationships and the people that you get to maintain relationships and communication with, the advice you can consistently ask when things come up. So that's awesome. Do you have any piece of advice that came from YC that you'd want to share?
Yeah, what I'd say about YC advice is it's all the obvious stuff that is the most meaningful. And that obvious stuff is actually all publicly available online. They're very good at that. There's not a lot of surprises. It's things like build things people want. Things like select one metric that actually matters in the business and orient all of your activity around making that number go up. Uh, be really disciplined about any activities that do not contribute to that number going up. Either cut them or very seriously evaluate why they exist on the to-do list. That's really some of the most effective advice that we got out of there. Another one is around making your first hires. First piece of advice on hiring a team and growing it is don't.
Mhm.
uh, you should always do any function that you're looking to hire for yourself several times over before you look to hire someone for that. Because then you're uniquely familiar with the nuances of that task and the challenges at hand.
Mhm.
And you may actually be able to do it yourself or find a way of automating it before you need to hire someone. Hiring is very arduous, it's very risky, it's very costly. Uh, Making the wrong hiring decision early on in a company is it's not a death sentence, but it is definitely, when you look at the compounding effects of it, one of the single most expensive mistakes you can make along the way, right?
It's really good advice. Very, very good. Just a few more questions for you. Maybe something a little bit more serious or something a little bit more personal. What are your thoughts on state of healthcare in the U.S. currently? And then maybe a follow up to that would be in how AI can impact the healthcare system.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of angles here.
Yeah.
The healthcare system, of course, is incredibly complex, and there are so many vested interests involved, um, both on a micro level and a macro level, right? People frequently talk about, for example, the lobbying that takes place in Washington. But even on the micro level, when you're talking about what incentives, for example, individual physicians have to recommend specific treatments. So it's a very big uh, whale to tackle. And our approach is, how can we see very obvious problems that can be alleviated by technology and tackle those first to make this system incrementally better for people and improve their experience? We're not going to be able to transform the entire healthcare system. I don't think any individual or even many groups of individuals can do that, uh, at least over a short period of time. So that being said, there are so many opportunities, whether it be voice AI or otherwise, to impact things for people, impact things for payers, the insurance companies, impact things for distribution of plans in our case, working with brokers and their members to make sure that people are getting the correct coverage and understand it deeply, as well as with providers and patients, those interactions. Um, so, a really interesting nuance, though, is as more and more people keep tackling these individual inefficiencies throughout the system, piecemeal with systems, they're going to end up colliding at some point, which will be a very interesting moment of reckoning.
Hmm.
One example of this that I've seen recently is there's a lot of voice AI companies that are building systems for payers to call providers, right? Or rather, payers to receive calls from providers about things like prior authorization for treatments. And on the flip side, there are also voice AI companies designing voice agents for providers to call those insurance companies.
Yeah, yeah,
That being said, both of those individual companies are designing these assistants with the idea that there's going to be a human on the other side of the line in mind. So at one point, we'll end up with AI agents speaking with other AI agents to get things done, uh, which will present a short-term challenge, but a
yeah,
long-term opportunity where these systems can actually interface more directly with each other and get things done.
yeah,
Same goes with when individuals and consumers have their own virtual assistants conducting different tasks on their behalf, like scheduling the doctor's appointment, and the doctor has a voice AI receptionist to handle those appointment scheduling calls, right?
yeah, yeah. It's fascinating. It's exciting. It's a little nerve wracking. There's so many things, but lots of opportunity, to say the least, for improvement. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's very easy, I would say, in this world to be paralyzed by the amount of opportunity that this technology unlocks. And the best thing to do that I've seen is just pick something and start working on it. It's okay if it's the wrong thing, but it means momentum and it means you're moving in a direction nonetheless.
yeah,
Uh, I ended up discovering AI Rudder from the PR firm that I was at, and that's how I discovered this technology. And that's in turn how I discovered all the interesting pain points and problems that can be solved from it and met some of the people that made Carecycle possible.
yeah,
So one opportunity always leads to the next serendipitously, and you can only really tell looking back really what led to what. But as long as the common thread through all of it is momentum and motion rather than paralysis by analysis,
hmm,
you should be safe as long as you're taking advantage of this wave in one way or another and just getting a little bit better every day. Things are going to work out.
yeah, yeah. That's great advice. What's next for Carecycle? Do you have a roadmap? Do you have a launch of anything? What can we expect from you?
Yeah, so we're incredibly excited for an upcoming launch in early September. I can't say too much right now, but um, agency operating system are kind of the key words involved here. We've learned that there are a lot of fragmented systems in this space, none of which our customers are particularly excited about, let alone duct taping them all together. And so we see a tremendous opportunity to have all this data in one place with the AI native capabilities of being able to extend your team with it.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, can you let us know? Can you let the listeners know where to find you, where to find Carecycle? If anybody's interested, how do they get involved?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the number one spot. Alex Doonanco on LinkedIn, or Carecycle's page, or carecycle.ai.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. There's so many great pieces of advice and really good inspiration here, Alex. So thanks again for coming on. And everybody, till next time, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian.
All right.